So this video is for ERPsim instructors who are using the 3rd edition of my textbook with the fall 2020 changes to ERPsim. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a background of the 3rd edition, talk a little bit about the ERPsim fall 2020 release, some adjustments to my textbook in regards to the SAP labs. There's an easy option, and then there's a less easy, but in many ways preferred option. And then also OData, which is basically going to be me saying, check out ERPsim. I'll also talk a little bit about the 4th edition, which a lot to do for that. So the 3rd edition, to explain it, I'm going to go back actually to the 2nd. The 2nd edition was all SAP ECC. The 3rd edition, because the 2019 release became S4HANA, I made the 3rd edition all about the migration from ECC to S4HANA. And it was modular in nature, is modular in nature, so that you can choose to cover those things if you'd like to in your class. But either way, it was there. The strategy parameters were the same from the 2nd to the 3rd, but I did expand on the strategy a bit and started getting into the analytics, both with a reference to Fiori, but really hitting the OData side of things. But all the way through the 3rd edition was written with the migration, the ECC to S4HANA migration. That was the kind of the focus throughout. Now the ERPsim Fall 2020 release, if you don't know anything about the changes, you definitely want to go visit the ERPsim Learning Portal. There are a number of different videos and documents kind of telling you what the changes are. It's outside the scope of this video to give you a full, this is what changed, and the how-tos that go along with it. But a dramatic change in how it works is we've gone to one server, one client, and within that client, we have 10 simulation company sets with one user ID for all 10. And there are in addition, there are 200 plus companies for exercises, which is a whole separate user ID. And you can really, at that point, have one student assigned to one company code. So they're not all trying to work within one company code within the typical, the previous AA to ZZ company set. OData users are specific. It uses the credentialing from the SAP ERP server, and you can download all the company sets at once. So lots of changes there. Again, if you don't really know what's going on with these, make sure that you do go to the ERPsim Learning Portal to get a little bit more. When you execute zsim_start now, it's only one client, but you have to tell it which company set you want, and it can be either the exercises or the different company sets. The 200 company codes, the user IDs for the exercises, again, the user IDs don't match the textbook, the company codes don't match the textbook, and then the user ID, 10 company sets, again, there's only one company set that actually matches the textbook, so it kind of makes for some planning before you start your semester to know which one you're going to be using. So when you go through the idea behind this of having one user ID and 10 company sets, when you configure within zsim_start, you choose the company set you want to use. Once it's executed, the students don't have access to previous data from the other company sets. What the benefit is that there's no need to refresh your client. You have 10 different simulations you can run using the exact same company sets company letter, different company sets. So you don't have to refresh. You don't have to contact the UCC for a refresh between games. The challenge is, giving an extension to something like I've in the past given students some time to work on the labs. You can work on it another week. Well, now if I go through and I try to do a simulation while someone's trying to do the labs, once I set it for the simulation, the exercises are no longer available. That company set is no longer available. It can't be both. The other part with this is that the user ID sticks with your student all semester, so up to 10 games, but only one company set is available at a time. And if this is all new to you, you don't know what I'm talking about, please go and check out ERPsim. Going forward, I'm going to presume you understand what's happening in fall 2020, and I'm also presuming you have experience with ERPsim. I hope this is not your first semester. Make sure you visit the Learning Portal to learn all these different things. Realize that ERPsim does not support my textbook, so they won't say something like, if you're using Tim's textbook, make sure you... So you're going to have to watch this video to get some of those differences between the fall 2020 and the 3rd edition. You have two options going into the SAP labs for using the 3rd edition. One is to use the standard company set, so it's set 1, and that follows how it's been for a decade, the AA to ZZ company set. The only real difference between the textbook and the labs is the user ID. So in the textbook, it references that it's that $pound for your user ID, and now it's $_pound. and realize that that user ID sticks with the student throughout the duration, throughout those 10 company sets. It does also require a change to ZSIM_start to be able to use those labs. I'll show you that in a moment. You also have the other option is exercises. So it's same as above, that the user ID is different, and it does require an adjustment to ZSIM_start, but it's totally different company codes. So while the textbook is referencing the $$ company code, it's actually now totally different. So students are going to need to adjust the instructions, which is, it's a challenge when you have a printed copy of the textbook and it doesn't match what you have. So talking about those two here, so it's that using set one, the $$ company set, and then also the exercises. I'm going to go through those options now. The easy for students option is to just use the set one, the standard company set. So within ZSIM_start, choosing extended, set one, the AA to ZZ, scroll down to setup options, click the advanced user authorizations, and then execute. And with that, it follows the textbook. So this is the way it has been. Now realize that it has, you only have this company set once. Once you use it for something else, the UCC really isn't doing refreshes anymore until you've used up all of your company sets. So if you've used this one already, you're going to have to make some modifications. So, and this uses one of your 10 simulation company sets. You only get 26 company codes, and this is how this has been since the beginning. You only get those 26 company codes from A to ZZ. So if you have a large class, you can't assign one student for a company code. They'd have to work together. And that's actually what I do within my classes, is I have student groups work together on these labs. And the exercises are actually written for that. Any OData connections you have will download this data, which no problem. There'll be a filter for it, but realize that if someone is looking at all of the different company sets data through OData, they're going to see their exercises included in the data. So again, no worries, you can filter for that, and then there's also a way of turning it off if you want. Again, this only works with that one set. If you've used it for something else, and maybe if you didn't realize going into the semester that you would need to make some changes, if you used that set one already, maybe for the distribution game, that's what I do within my class. The first week of class, we just do the distribution game, just kind of like a get your feet wet and icebreaker. But again, if you use that, it's not going to match the screenshots in the textbook. And that's okay. You can use one of the other sets, but then the company codes are a little different. That advanced user authorizations means students have access to all the T codes. That may or may not be an issue. Again, that's how it was before, so it's probably not that big of a deal, but realize that students have access to T codes that they don't necessarily need access to when you use that advanced user authorizations. The preferred option is to go to a whole separate space within your client and use these exercises. And this is within ZSIM_start. There's a tab for exercises. You choose the default, the cache-to-cache manufacturing, and now you have company set for exercises. And it's 001 through 200. You choose this, click execute, you're all set. However, there are some drawbacks, and it's the preferred reasons for it are also some of the drawbacks using the textbook. You have 200 company codes with 5 user IDs per company code. This easily accommodates a large class. It also gives you, and I have this from time to time where a student has kind of messed things up so much in lab 1 that they just want to start over. Well, when you only have 26 company codes, that's not really an option. Now, 200 company codes? Hey, how many would you like? You want to do this 5 times? Go for it. The other nice part about it, but also a drawback, is that the user ID is totally different. So the good part about that is that there's a clear line between we're doing a simulation, we're doing the labs. So it's totally different. You can tell I'm in the exercises. I've logged on and using a different user ID. This is definitely not the simulation. This is definitely the labs. And when we go back to the simulation, there's that clear delineation between the two. The exercises are configured for the required T codes. So this is another preference. You don't have access to all those other T codes out there. As an admin you do, but the students don't. So they're only using the ones that are necessary for manufacturing exercises. The next edition of the textbook, the 4th edition, will use these company codes, those separate within the client, these exercises, the company codes and the user IDs. Again, a drawback, it does not follow the textbook instructions at all, nor the screenshots. So the textbook throughout references $$ for company codes, but it's actually pound within this. Realize students can always check this new transaction Z.org to find what they're supposed to be working within. And here I am showing you a PowerPoint. But at this point, I would jump in and actually kind of show you what things are. So on page 11 of the textbook here, there is a reference to how everything is set up. So this group, this is something that you assign. And then what I try to do is I have group 1 lined up with A, group 2 lined up with B. So here's your company letter. And all I need to do is tell them their company letter, traditionally, not fall 2020 anymore, and they just know that their company code is AA. That's kind of built in. And the textbook makes reference to, well, if you have your company letter, you know that your company code is AA. It's not necessarily like that anymore, in that you're going to be having these different company sets. Now, the SIM ID, it says right there in the textbook that it is really, that's $pound, and it's telling you that that's what your user IDs are. Those user IDs aren't the same anymore. That has changed. And here's where it gets a bit more confusing. The material code AA-F04 is actually the same. So because students will be able to have that same user ID throughout, what they've done with ERPsim is they've made it so that the material codes stay the same. Confusing. All right, so when you're in the ZSIM_start, choose extended, and then you can choose between these different company sets. And again, it's AAZZ through A9Z9. What I'm planning to do within my class is I actually have 9 different ERPsim games that we do, and I'm going to have them use these company sets so that students know when they're going back and looking at OData, which I'll talk about in a moment, they know that the OData for A2 was from game 2. The OData from A7 or set 7 is from game 7. So that's kind of nice. But realize to look like the textbook, you can only use set 1, and this is really just the way it's looked for the past 10 years within the manufacturing game AA to ZZ. You have to scroll down to setup options and do advanced user authorizations and execute. And this makes it, aside from the user ID, the same as it was before. So this will follow the textbook. But again, if you use set 1 for anything else, it's not going to work for you unless you get a refresh, and the UCCs don't like that. So in the textbook, again, it's making reference to these things. The textbook is making reference to AA to ZZ. If you set it for set 6 and it's A6 through Z6, throughout the textbook, when it makes reference to the company code, it's not going to end up being that $$. And here's an example of it. So your company letter twice, $$. It says that the plant is ZZ or AABB. If you're using a different set, it's not going to match the textbook. And this is the very beginning of just going through this, is seeing, all right, your sales organization is your company letter twice. That's no longer the case if you're using a different set. So these are the kinds of things where you have this print textbook and it's looking different than what's actually happening in the client. Jumping ahead, I'm going to give you a little bit more here just to kind of see what's happening on the student side. So I'm going to give you a couple of different details that are different. And I'm going to show you this within so I'm logged in as, these are the new exercise user IDs. So it's EX200-200_5. This means I'm in company code 200. I know this is very weird to think about this. If you've been doing ERPsim for a long time, like I have, it's, wait, what? So company code 200, and you have 5 user IDs, so it's clearly delineated that it is exercise, company code 001 through 200, and then you have 5 different user IDs, _1 through _5. I'll show you that in ZSIM_start. So 001 through 200, these are the different company codes that are out there, and we can even see here, you can choose between all these different items. You can see these are the user IDs. It's marked as a team. This is the company code. It gets, with the textbook and even previous documentation being written to that $$, it's tough to figure out what it is that you're going to be changing. Now there is a new T code here, that Z.org, and I'm going to show you that first. So if a student is logged in and they're not sure what they're going to be using, they can always find it in this Z.org. And this is not in the textbook. This is something you're going to have to communicate to students. But this is how they'll know that the organization, the sales organization is 200. The purchase organization is 200. The plant is 200. So let me show you VA01. Then this is just the standard sales order. Oh, not 18. It's not distribution game. And so the material code doesn't have that $sign. It's not AA, it's your company number. A little different. So here it is, the nut muesli. So here we go. This is kind of what it looks like within those exercises. Again, the material code is different. Your company, your sales organization is different. So the other part, I'm going to show you the textbook here. Because this is a whole new S4HANA server, some things actually look a little different. So this is what the screenshot is in the textbook. And it says, if it doesn't look exactly like this, something's wrong. Go back and fix it. Ooh, well, let's see what the ATP looks like here. It actually looks different. So this is part of the, so you can see it says 1,000 here, 1,000 there, and it says 00 here. Is it wrong? No, this is actually what it's supposed to look like now. So in the 4th edition, it'll be updated to give this. There are a few screenshots like this throughout the textbook that it's just changed from the, I think it was 1709, now it's 1809 server. So again, so it's just some things that your students will get to and they'll say, oh, what's wrong here? No, it's actually right. It's just a whole different server. So again, I'm going to mention this a couple of times. Go through and practice this yourself. Make sure you understand what it is that your students will be doing so that they notice the differences. And this difference here, this one between the textbook and the new server, this view is different whether you're using the set 1 or you're using the exercises. So realize that there are some differences in some of the screenshots. What I found in the years of doing this is that students tend to have a lot of questions getting into the lab, so starting lab 1, logging on, and then whether they're using the web GUI or a different theme, whatever it might be, some of those differences, they have questions and then they kind of go away. And by lab 2, they don't have those questions anymore. So I'm presuming that's how it's going to be with this. But some of those changes, they'll just kind of figure it out and get used to it. Whichever one you choose, again, realize the screenshots are a little different. It's a whole new server. This is, it's not like something's wrong, it's just it's changed. And I showed you that already. That's good. So again, try it yourself. Make sure you understand so you can communicate it, and then hopefully the students kind of get things going. And I typically get things like, I keep using ZZ-F06 and it's not working. Well, I assigned you company A, so you can't follow the screenshots. Oh, okay. So I'm hoping that those things will end up working their ways out. So that's it for the labs itself. Realize that there are some differences, but OData has changed as well. And exactly what that is, they actually just updated this, so I haven't had a chance to look at it. But I've used it, but I haven't seen their documentation for it yet. But realize that within the textbook it says the OData specific username and password for the above server is not your ERPsim user ID. Now it is. So the textbook says it's not this, it actually is. And how you get to this URI builder, I haven't seen the documentation yet. They just released it. But you're going to be putting in your username and password in a whole different place to be able to use it with something like Tableau or Excel. So it's some of these beginning pieces of it. The nice thing is that I did recommend that everybody goes and visits the learning portal within the textbook just to see the most up-to-date piece. So hopefully they are doing that. But again, it does say a few times, this is not your ERPsim username and password. Now it is. How you go through and you build these, I do have built in. You need to improvise, but how this is set up now, it's not following the textbook entirely. So you just need to let students know. Once they get this information, once they pull the data in, again, it's because you have these different company sets. Come on. Here we go. Because you have the different company sets within this, students will have access to all the different OData company sets if you set it up. And actually I can show you that now. What's it, this one? Sorry, these are all new to me too. Not that one. Realize that there are some other things you can put in here. What am I missing? Oh, there it is. So you can choose which one you want the students to see. So if you're using this one for your labs, don't choose it, but you can choose whichever site you want students to see. Realize that when they do connect to their company code and download that data, they're actually downloading all of it. So they will see A2, A3, A4, A5 within their data, which is not part of these instructions here. So an additional piece will have to be telling your students they need to filter for company code. So that's, again, not something that's in here. If you are assigning OData, even if you're not, students might turn to that section. Make sure you let them know that things have changed. The textbook is actually outdated at this point. So make sure you communicate that with your students. Let's see here. Am I missing anything? Nope. Okay. Now the 4th edition, which I have not even begun, it's going to be 100% S4 HANA. I'm not going to do anything that's, if you're familiar with the 3rd edition, it does make reference to this is what ECC looks like. I'm not going to make reference to those things. So it's going to be just using the default GUI theme, which will better match the web GUI as well. I'm going to be using those exercises, that pound, pound, pound company codes, and I'm going to push a bit more to try SAP Fiori within it. The other thing I'm planning on putting in it is in-text references to YouTube videos. A little scary doing that because they can definitely change. If YouTube changes how you get to certain things, I don't know how I'm going to do that. But I'm planning on doing those things so that students, as they're reading, they can go and see a demonstration of what's happening. I'm planning to keep the 3rd edition available for a while, but I'm never going to rewrite it for the fall 2020 release. So it will always be outdated, and it may reach a point where the book won't work anymore. But the only reason you would want to use that 3rd edition is if you want to show your students the migration within your classroom. So that migration piece, it's going to be mentioned, but it's not going to be really what's kind of underlying the entire textbook. The entire textbook is going to be, we're already there. We're S4 HANA now. If you have any questions about this, realize that the UCCs, the UWM, Chico, they both know me, but they don't support my textbook. ERPsim doesn't support my textbook either. They definitely know me. They know me there. But no one else supports it. So if you're having a very specific question, if you're experiencing something, you have a couple of different directions with it. If you know for sure it's a technical issue, go to the UCC. If it's an ERPsim thing, definitely go with them. If it's more specific to my textbook, you're going to need to go to me, and they'll tell you. If you ask them questions and they don't, it's outside of them, they'll let you know. If you come to me first, I'll be upfront with, that's not me, and push you to the appropriate support. Just kind of realize I don't want to get into like a finger pointing kind of, well, it's them, it's this, don't talk to me. But I'm going to point you to the UCC or ERPsim if it's outside of what's happening within my textbook. My overall recommendation for this, regardless if you're using the textbook or not, is to practice, practice, practice. Enough has changed that, as you can see, as I was demonstrating this, getting used to the company code being numbers now, or having numbers in them. So make sure you work through and make sure you understand what it is that you're assigning your students. I'll continue to update the course website and my YouTube channel. Please keep buying new copies of my textbook. Encourage your students to buy new. It is the only way that I am able to fund putting these things together. I'm just an adjunct, so I have no university benefactor. No one's paying me to do this. The only way I get paid for these is by buying new textbooks, so please encourage your students to buy new. Directly from Amazon is the best way to support me on this. If you have any questions, definitely send me an email. I'm going to include within this video, within the comments area, not comments, within the description, a link to my LinkedIn profile. Send me a message there. If you haven't connected to me, definitely connect to me on there. And that's it. Take the time to practice before you send this out to your students.